This prayer will shield your life from all evil. There are moments in life when danger does not announce itself. It does not knock, it does not warn, and it does not come with visible signs. Evil often moves silently, disguising itself as coincidence, distraction, temptation, or even comfort. Many people only realize they were under attack after damage has already been done. When peace is gone, clarity is broken, relationships are fractured, or faith feels distant. This is why prayer is not merely a spiritual ritual. It is a shield, a living, active defense placed around the soul, the mind, the body, and the path ahead. This prayer is not about fear. It is about authority. It is about alignment. It is about standing under divine protection with awareness and intention. Throughout history, those who understood spiritual realities knew that protection does not begin when danger arrives. It begins long before. It begins in the unseen realm, where words spoken in faith establish boundaries that darkness cannot cross. Many underestimate the power of prayer because they see it as passive. In truth, prayer is an act of spiritual positioning. When spoken with sincerity, humility, and trust, it becomes a declaration that your life does not belong to chaos, chance, or evil intent. It belongs to God. This prayer is designed to surround your life with divine covering, to silence unseen attacks, to block doors that should never open, and to strengthen your spirit so that even when trials come, they do not consume you. As you listen, read, or speak these words, you are not repeating empty phrases. You are stepping into a place of refuge. You are acknowledging that protection is not something you earn, but something you receive when you surrender control and trust divine wisdom over human understanding. Let your heart be open, let your mind be focused, and allow this prayer to become more than words. Let it become a spiritual boundary around your life. Understanding spiritual protection and the reality of evil. Spiritual protection begins with understanding. Many people want protection without awareness, safety without vigilance, peace without discipline. But spiritual reality does not function that way. Evil does not always appear dramatic or terrifying. Most often, it works through subtle erosion, small compromises, repeated distractions, quiet doubts, emotional exhaustion, unresolved resentment, and unguarded thoughts. Protection, therefore, is not only about resisting obvious danger, it is about guarding the inner life where battles are first formed. Evil is not merely external. It seeks entry points. It looks for unguarded places in the heart, moments of weakness in the mind, and seasons of fatigue in the spirit. This is why prayer must be consistent and intentional. A shield is only effective when it is raised before the blow lands. Spiritual protection is not superstition. It is awareness paired with trust in divine authority. When you pray for protection, you are not informing God of danger. He already knows. You are aligning yourself with divine order. You are acknowledging that there are forces beyond human perception, and that you choose to live under guidance rather than vulnerability. This act of humility is powerful because it removes the illusion of self-sufficiency, which is often the greatest weakness of all. Many attacks do not come to destroy immediately. They come to confuse, to delay, to drain. A mind filled with anxiety becomes less discerning. A heart burdened with fear becomes easier to manipulate. A spirit disconnected from prayer becomes vulnerable to deception. This is why protection prayers often focus first on the inner world before addressing external circumstances. Spiritual protection is also about permission. Evil cannot cross certain boundaries unless given access. This access is often granted unknowingly, through bitterness held too long, forgiveness withheld, pride nurtured, or truth ignored. Prayer restores those boundaries. It revokes permissions that were granted unconsciously. It reclaims territory that was surrendered through neglect or ignorance. When you pray for your life to be shielded from all evil, you are declaring that your thoughts, decisions, relationships, and future are not open to corruption. You are placing your will under divine wisdom. You are choosing clarity over confusion, peace over chaos, and faith over fear. This does not mean life becomes free of difficulty. It means difficulty no longer has authority over your direction. True spiritual protection does not isolate you from the world. It strengthens you within it. It allows you to walk through uncertainty without being consumed by it. It sharpens discernment so that you recognize what aligns with your calling and what must be rejected, even if it appears attractive or harmless on the surface. This is why this prayer matters. It is not about hiding from life. It is about walking through life covered, grounded, and guided. When protection is established, fear loses its grip. When fear loosens, clarity emerges. And when clarity leads, decisions change, paths shift, and outcomes transform. The shield formed by prayer is not fragile. It is reinforced through trust, consistency, and obedience. Each time you return to prayer, you strengthen that covering. Each time you choose truth over impulse, you reinforce the boundary. Over time, what once felt like constant struggle becomes discernment. What once felt like threat becomes awareness, and what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable through divine strength. This is the foundation of a life protected from evil, not a life without challenges, but a life that refuses to be ruled by darkness, confusion, or fear. A life anchored in prayer becomes difficult to destabilize, because its center is not dependent on circumstances, but on divine presence. If this message is strengthening your faith and helping you build spiritual protection in your life, subscribe to the channel so you can continue receiving prayers and teachings that guard your mind, strengthen your spirit, and keep you aligned with divine truth. How prayer builds an invisible shield around your mind. Body and destiny prayer is not symbolic. It is not poetic language spoken into the air. Prayer is a real spiritual transaction that establishes boundaries in realms the human eye cannot see, but the human life constantly feels. When prayer is sincere and aligned with truth, it produces effects that are not emotional illusions, but structural changes in the spiritual environment surrounding a person. This is why prayer is repeatedly described as protection, refuge, fortress, shield, and covering. These are not metaphors chosen casually. They describe function. The mind is always the first battlefield. Before evil touches circumstances, it targets perception. Confusion precedes collapse. Doubt precedes deviation. Fear precedes paralysis. When prayer is absent, the mind becomes porous. Thoughts enter unchecked. Anxieties multiply. Inner dialogue turns hostile. Over time, this erosion feels normal, even though it is not. Prayer interrupts this process. It stabilizes the inner world and establishes mental order where chaos seeks to rule. When you pray for protection, you are not only asking to be spared from harm, you are reinforcing clarity. Clarity is protection. A clear mind recognizes manipulation. A grounded mind resists deception. A disciplined mind does not spiral easily. Prayer trains the mind to return to truth when lies attempt to dominate emotional space. This alone blocks countless forms of evil that depend on confusion to succeed. The body, though physical, is deeply influenced by spiritual and mental states. Prolonged fear weakens it. Chronic stress compromises it. Unresolved emotional conflict manifests physically over time. Prayer does not replace responsibility or care, but it restores internal harmony that the body responds to. When prayer becomes habitual, the body exits constant survival mode. It breathes, it steadies, it regains balance. Many forms of harm lose momentum simply because the internal environment no longer sustains them. Prayer also affects timing. Destiny is not only about where you go, but when you arrive. Evil often attacks through misalignment, wrong decisions made at the wrong time, impulsive choices made under pressure, delays caused by fear, or premature actions driven by impatience. Prayer slows the rush that leads to regret. It creates space between impulse and action. In that space, wisdom operates. An invisible shield does not block every challenge. It filters outcomes. It redirects paths that would lead to destruction. It closes doors that appear beneficial but conceal harm. Often protection looks like disappointment in the moment and relief later. A relationship that never formed. An opportunity that fell apart. A plan that stalled. Without prayer, these moments feel like loss. With prayer, they are revealed as intervention. Many people misunderstand protection because they expect it to look dramatic. They imagine rescue from visible danger. But most protection happens quietly. It is the accident that never occurred, the argument that never escalated, the temptation that lost its appeal, the decision that felt strangely wrong even when logic supported it. These are not coincidences. They are indicators of a shield actively functioning. Prayer strengthens intuition not as instinct, but as alignment. When the inner world is attuned to truth, signals become clearer. Discomfort arises where danger hides. Peace confirms safe direction. This discernment is not mystical guesswork. It is the natural result of sustained spiritual alignment. Evil depends on blindness. Prayer restores sight. The shield formed by prayer also influences relational boundaries. Many harms enter life through people, sometimes intentionally, often unconsciously. Prayer sharpens awareness of energy, intent, and pattern. You begin to notice who drains you, who manipulates subtly, who resists your growth, and who benefits from your confusion. Protection does not always remove these people instantly, but it empowers you to respond differently. Distance replaces entanglement. Wisdom replaces confrontation. Silence replaces reaction. Another dimension of prayer's shield is endurance. Some seasons cannot be avoided. Loss happens. Pressure comes. Opposition arises. Protection does not mean exemption. It means preservation. You emerge intact. Your identity remains stable. Your values are not compromised. Your faith does not collapse. Many survive hardship, but lose themselves in the process. Prayer ensures survival without erosion. Over time, consistent prayer alters your spiritual posture. You stop living defensively and start living anchored. Evil thrives on reaction. Prayer cultivates response. Reaction is impulsive, emotional, and short-sighted. Response is measured, aware, and rooted. This shift alone neutralizes many attacks that rely on provoking error rather than enforcing destruction. Prayer also fortifies your future against generational repetition. Patterns that destroyed others in your family or environment lose authority when confronted by conscious alignment. Addiction cycles, relational dysfunction, self-sabotage, and chronic fear do not disappear magically, but they lose inevitability. Prayer breaks inevitability. It replaces it with choice. The invisible shield is reinforced each time you return to prayer without desperation, without bargaining, without performance. Simply returning, simply aligning, simply acknowledging that you do not see everything, but you trust the one who does. This humility is not weakness, it is strategic strength. There will be days when prayer feels dry, repetitive, or unremarkable. Those are often the days it is doing the most work beneath the surface. Protection is rarely loud. It is consistent. Like armor worn daily, it does not announce itself. It simply absorbs what would otherwise wound. The greatest misconception is believing protection is passive. In reality, prayer is participation. You are choosing alignment over autonomy, guidance over impulse, trust over control. Each choice strengthens the shield. Each return reinforces the boundary. A life covered in prayer does not become smaller, it becomes clearer. Focus sharpens. Purpose stabilizes. Fear loses its authority. Evil loses its access points. What remains is not perfection, but resilience. Not immunity, but endurance. Not escape, but direction. And direction is often the greatest protection of all. If this teaching is helping you understand how prayer actively shields your life and strengthens your path, subscribe to the channel so you can continue receiving prayers and messages that protect your mind, guard your spirit, and align your destiny with truth. How prayer neutralizes hidden attacks, breaks spiritual traps, and restores authority over your life. There are battles that announce themselves loudly, and there are battles that operate silently, patiently, and strategically. The most dangerous forms of evil are rarely the ones that appear obvious. They are the ones that disguise themselves as normality, fatigue, routine, or harmless compromise. Hidden attacks do not aim for immediate destruction. They aim for gradual surrender. Prayer is the force that exposes these hidden movements and neutralizes them before they take root. Many people believe attacks only happen when life visibly falls apart. In reality, many attacks occur when life seems stable but stagnant, when growth slows without clear reason, when motivation fades inexplicably, when joy becomes muted, and when clarity feels distant. These are not always psychological accidents. Often, they are indicators of subtle spiritual pressure designed to weaken authority from within. Prayer restores authority by reconnecting you to your rightful position. Authority is not dominance over others. It is mastery over self and alignment with divine order. When prayer weakens, authority erodes. Decision-making becomes reactive. Boundaries blur. Discernment dulls. Over time, this creates openings where harmful patterns can operate freely. Hidden attacks thrive on repetition. A single negative thought is not dangerous. Repeated unchecked thoughts become belief. A single emotional lapse is not destructive. Repeated emotional avoidance becomes numbness. A single compromise does not define a person. Repeated compromise reshapes identity. Prayer interrupts repetition. It creates moments of interruption where awareness re-enters the system. Spiritual traps are rarely dramatic. They are comfortable. They offer relief without resolution, distraction without healing, movement without direction. These traps are designed to keep you busy but unfulfilled, active but misaligned, occupied but disconnected. Prayer exposes these traps by restoring alignment between action and purpose. When alignment returns, traps lose their appeal. One of the most effective traps is internal accusation. When a person is constantly self-critical, ashamed or burdened by unresolved guilt, they become easier to control. Shame drains energy. It keeps attention turned inward in unhealthy ways. Prayer shifts the internal dialogue. It does not deny responsibility, but it restores dignity. It separates conviction from condemnation. This distinction is critical. Conviction leads to correction. Condemnation leads to paralysis. Prayer also neutralizes attacks aimed at memory. Many people are unknowingly trapped in cycles of reliving past pain, replaying old wounds, or redefining themselves by previous failures. This fixation weakens present authority. Prayer grounds the mind in the present while restoring perspective on the past. Memories lose their power to define identity. Lessons remain, but control dissolves. Another hidden attack operates through urgency. Constant pressure to act quickly, decide immediately, respond instantly, or produce results creates anxiety-driven living. Anxiety narrows perception. Narrow perception increases error. Prayer slows the internal pace. It restores patience. Patience is not delay, it is clarity without panic. Many harmful decisions are avoided simply because prayer reintroduces stillness. Spiritual traps often present themselves as logic without wisdom. Something makes sense on the surface but feels wrong internally. Prayer sharpens sensitivity to these discrepancies. You begin to recognize when something is technically acceptable but spiritually misaligned. This awareness protects future consequences that logic alone cannot foresee. Authority is also reclaimed through language. Words spoken internally and externally shape perception and direction. Hidden attacks often distort language, turning self-talk negative, hope cynical, and truth diluted. Prayer realigns language with intention. Over time, your words carry weight again. You speak with clarity. You refuse to reinforce harm through careless speech. Prayer breaks cycles not by force, but by consistency. Many traps rely on momentum. They persist because nothing interrupts them. Prayer is interruption. Even when nothing feels dramatic, prayer disrupts inertia. It creates new patterns. Over time, these patterns replace old ones. What once felt inevitable begins to feel optional. Another critical aspect of prayer is restoration of spiritual sensitivity. Constant exposure to noise, information overload, emotional overstimulation, digital distraction dulls perception. When perception dulls, danger blends into background noise. Prayer quiets the internal environment. In quiet, sensitivity returns. You notice subtle shifts. You sense misalignment earlier. Early detection is protection. Hidden attacks often exploit isolation. Not physical isolation, but emotional and spiritual disconnection. When a person feels unseen, unheard, or unsupported, vulnerability increases. Prayer restores connection, not always to people but to presence. Presence dissolves isolation. Even when alone, you are not disconnected. This awareness strengthens resilience. Prayer also restores confidence without arrogance. Confidence rooted in ego is fragile. Confidence rooted in alignment is stable. When prayer becomes habitual, self-trust improves. Not because you believe you are infallible, but because you trust guidance beyond your limitations. This trust reduces fear-based decision-making. Spiritual traps lose effectiveness when authority is restored because authority brings responsibility. You stop blaming circumstances entirely. You stop outsourcing responsibility for your inner state. Prayer empowers accountability without self-punishment. You recognize your role without condemning yourself. This balance is essential for sustainable growth. Over time, prayer changes how you interpret resistance. Instead of assuming every obstacle is opposition, you learn to discern whether resistance is protection, redirection, or refinement. Misinterpretation of resistance leads to unnecessary struggle. Prayer clarifies interpretation. Neutralizing hidden attacks does not make life effortless. It makes life intentional. Intentional living reduces collateral damage. You stop reacting blindly. You stop repeating avoidable pain. You stop tolerating what erodes peace. Authority manifests not as control over outcomes, but as clarity in response. Prayer also dismantles fear of the unseen. Fear amplifies imagined threats. Prayer grounds perception in reality rather than speculation. When fear diminishes, manipulation loses power. Many traps rely on exaggerated consequences. Prayer restores proportional thinking. Restored authority also affects how you handle success. Without prayer, success can inflate ego or create new vulnerabilities. With prayer, success becomes stewardship rather than entitlement. This mindset protects future stability. Ultimately, prayer does not eliminate darkness by pretending it does not exist. It neutralizes darkness by refusing to operate within its framework. It shifts the operating system of the soul. When the operating system changes, old viruses no longer function. A life rooted in prayer is not a life free from opposition. It is a life where opposition no longer dictates direction. Hidden attacks lose stealth. Traps lose attraction. Authority returns quietly, steadily, and powerfully. If this message is strengthening your discernment and helping you reclaim spiritual authority over your life, subscribe to the channel so you can continue receiving teachings and prayers that expose hidden dangers, restore clarity, and keep your path protected. How consistent prayer seals doors to destruction and redirects your life towards safety, peace, and fulfillment. There are doors in life that once opened are difficult to close, not because closure is impossible, but because what enters through those doors establishes momentum. Destructive habits rarely begin as destruction. Harmful relationships rarely begin as harm. Dangerous paths rarely appear dangerous at the start. They often present themselves as relief, opportunity, affection, ambition, or escape. The role of prayer is not merely to protect you once destruction is visible, but to seal doors before destruction gains access. This is one of the most underestimated powers of consistent prayer. Prayer does not only ask for intervention, it creates prevention. It sharpens perception so that doors are recognized for what they truly are, not for how they are advertised. Many people look back on painful chapters of their lives and say, "I should have known." Prayer is the difference between hindsight and foresight. It does not make you omniscient, but it increases sensitivity to warning signals that are otherwise easy to ignore. Destruction often enters through familiarity. What feels normal is rarely questioned. Repeated exposure creates tolerance. Over time, what once felt wrong becomes acceptable, and what once felt unacceptable becomes invisible. Prayer disrupts this numbing process. It resensitizes the conscience without producing fear. It restores internal alarms that were muted by repetition or exhaustion. One of the most dangerous misconceptions is believing that prayer must be emotional to be effective. In reality, consistency matters more than intensity. A calm, steady return to prayer builds a stronger seal than occasional emotional desperation. Desperation often appears after damage has begun. Consistency builds protection before damage is possible. Prayer seals doors by influencing choice architecture. It affects what you notice, what you tolerate, what you pursue, and what you decline. Over time, your decision-making landscape changes. Certain options simply stop appearing attractive. Certain temptations lose their emotional pull. Certain paths feel heavy even when they look promising. This is not repression, it is redirection. Redirection is one of the most merciful forms of protection. Many people ask why something they wanted deeply never materialized. They interpret delay or denial as punishment. In truth, many of those moments are closed doors, preventing future harm. Prayer gives meaning to redirection. It helps you trust that what did not happen may have saved you from what could have happened. Consistent prayer also restructures desire. Desire itself is not evil, but misdirected desire can lead to destruction. When desire is disconnected from wisdom, it becomes impulsive. Prayer reconnects desire to purpose. It does not remove longing, it purifies it. You begin to want what aligns rather than what distracts. One of the quiet ways destruction advances is through emotional depletion. When a person is constantly drained, clarity fades, boundaries weaken, compromises increase. Prayer restores emotional energy by anchoring identity beyond performance and approval. When your worth is no longer tied to external validation, manipulative doors close automatically. Prayer also seals doors through patience. Many destructive paths are entered because waiting feels unbearable. Loneliness, frustration, and fear of missing out push people toward decisions they are not ready to sustain. Prayer restores the capacity to wait without anxiety. Waiting becomes an active state rather than a void. This shift prevents rushed decisions that carry long-term consequences. Another critical door prayer seals is the door of self-betrayal. Self-betrayal occurs when a person repeatedly violates their own values to maintain comfort, belonging, or image. Over time, this creates internal division. Internal division weakens resolve. Prayer reunifies intention and action. When internal unity is restored, self-betrayal becomes harder to justify. Prayer also protects by altering how you interpret discomfort. Not all discomfort is danger, and not all comfort is safety. Many destructive doors are disguised as relief from discomfort. Prayer teaches discernment between discomfort that refines and discomfort that warns. This discernment prevents premature escape from necessary growth. Consistent prayer reshapes how you handle success as well. Success without grounding can open doors to pride, excess, and isolation. Prayer anchors success in stewardship rather than entitlement. This mindset seals doors that often open when success accelerates faster than character. Another form of protection prayer provides is relational clarity. Many doors to destruction are opened by relationships that erode boundaries gradually. Prayer heightens awareness of relational patterns. You begin to notice cycles of manipulation, dependency, control, or disrespect earlier. Awareness enables distance without drama. Distance seals doors without conflict. Prayer also restores long-term thinking. Destruction often thrives in short-term focus. When immediate gratification outweighs future consequence, dangerous doors swing open easily. Prayer expands perspective. It reminds you that present decisions echo into the future. This awareness strengthens restraint without suppressing joy. Sealed doors do not always look like obvious rejection. Sometimes they appear as disinterest, inconvenience, misalignment, or quiet closure. Prayer helps you recognize these signs as protection rather than misfortune. Gratitude replaces resentment. Acceptance replaces resistance. One of the most powerful effects of prayer is that it reduces internal noise. Internal noise clouds judgment. It amplifies fear, desire, and comparison. When noise decreases, truth becomes easier to recognize. Doors that once seemed confusing become clearly right or clearly wrong. Prayer also seals doors by reinforcing identity. When you know who you are and what you stand for, fewer doors are even considered. Identity simplifies choice. Without identity, every option feels negotiable. With identity, many options become irrelevant. Destruction also advances through normalization of dysfunction. Prayer interrupts normalization. It reminds you that just because something is common does not mean it is safe. Just because many people accept something does not mean it is aligned. This awareness protects against collective blind spots. Over time, consistent prayer creates an internal order that external chaos cannot easily penetrate. You become less reactive, less impulsive, and less susceptible to pressure. Doors that once felt tempting now feel unnecessary. Doors that once felt unavoidable now feel optional. Prayer does not remove all risk from life. It removes unnecessary risk. It filters choices so that effort is spent on growth rather than recovery. Recovery is possible, but prevention is wiser. Ultimately, sealed doors are not losses, they are boundaries. Boundaries preserve energy, clarity, and purpose. A life guided by prayer does not shrink, it stabilizes. Stability creates room for fulfillment that is not constantly threatened by collapse. Prayer redirects not by force, but by alignment. When alignment is strong, the right doors open naturally and the wrong doors lose relevance. This is how prayer shields your life, not by controlling the world, but by ordering your inner world so that destruction finds no invitation. If this message is helping you understand how prayer protects your future and seals doors that could lead to harm, subscribe to the channel so you can continue receiving guidance, prayers, and teachings that guard your life and strengthen your path. The prayer that sustains protection, daily and keeps evil from regaining access to your life. Protection is not a single moment, it is a maintained state. Many people experience periods of peace and assume the work is complete, only to become vulnerable again when vigilance fades. Evil rarely returns through force. It returns through familiarity, complacency, distraction, and neglect. This is why the most powerful prayer is not the one spoken once in desperation, but the one returned to daily with intention, humility, and trust. Sustained protection is not dramatic. It is disciplined. It is quiet. It is faithful. Daily prayer does not exist to remind God of your needs. It exists to re-anchor your awareness. Awareness is the guardian of alignment. When awareness drifts, access points reopen, not because protection was removed, but because boundaries were left unattended. Just as physical strength diminishes without maintenance, spiritual protection weakens when neglected. Prayer restores attention to what matters and renews commitment to live guarded rather than reactive. One of the most subtle ways evil regains access is through gradual desensitization. When life becomes busy, prayer can feel optional. When things are going well, vigilance feels unnecessary. When routines settle, urgency fades. This is when protection is tested most. Not during crisis, but during comfort. Daily prayer counters this by keeping humility alive. Humility is not self-degradation. It is accurate self-assessment. It acknowledges dependence without diminishing strength. Sustaining protection requires a shift from event-based prayer to rhythm-based prayer. Event-based prayer responds to problems. Rhythm-based prayer prevents them. This rhythm does not require long hours or elaborate words. It requires consistency and sincerity. A daily return, even brief, reinforces boundaries. It reminds the inner world that alignment is not seasonal. Prayer also sustains protection by continuously renewing intention. Intention directs behavior. When intention weakens, behavior drifts. Drift is dangerous because it feels natural. Daily prayer recalibrates intention before drift becomes distance. It realigns motives, clarifies priorities, and restores focus. Over time, this recalibration becomes instinctive. Another way prayer sustains protection is by cleansing accumulated residue. Daily life exposes the mind to fear, comparison, negativity, temptation, and noise. Even when resisted, exposure leaves residue. Prayer clears this residue before it hardens into belief or habit. Without this cleansing, small influences accumulate and subtly reshape perception. Prayer also keeps language aligned. Words spoken internally and externally shape reality. Over time, careless language can weaken protection by reinforcing fear, hopelessness, or resentment. Daily prayer corrects language patterns. It replaces complaint with perspective, panic with trust, and reaction with response. This linguistic realignment fortifies mental boundaries. Sustained protection also depends on forgiveness. Unforgiveness is one of the most common access points evil exploits. It binds emotional energy to the past and distorts perception in the present. Daily prayer prevents bitterness from settling. It does not force instant emotional resolution, but it keeps the heart open. An open heart heals, a closed heart hardens. Prayer maintains protection by restoring spiritual sensitivity. Sensitivity is not fragility, it is awareness. Without sensitivity, warning signals are missed. Prayer sharpens perception so that misalignment is noticed early. Early awareness prevents escalation. Many crises are avoided simply because misalignment was detected and corrected quickly. Daily prayer also reinforces identity. Identity determines boundaries. When identity weakens, boundaries collapse. Prayer reminds you who you are, what you value, and where your authority originates. This reminder reduces susceptibility to external pressure. When identity is clear, manipulation fails. Another critical function of prayer is restoring peace after exposure to conflict. Conflict disrupts internal order. Even when resolved externally, internal tension can linger. Lingering tension weakens protection by exhausting emotional reserves. Prayer restores peace, not by denial but by integration. It allows experiences to be processed rather than suppressed. Prayer also protects by keeping gratitude alive. Gratitude anchors perception in sufficiency rather than lack. Lack-driven thinking invites impulsive behavior. Gratitude-driven thinking strengthens restraint. This shift alone prevents countless destructive decisions made under the illusion of urgency. Sustained prayer also reframes adversity. Instead of interpreting difficulty as abandonment, prayer reframes it as refinement or redirection. This reframing preserves trust. When trust is preserved, panic does not dictate action. Calm action preserves protection. Another way prayer sustains protection is by reducing dependency on external validation. Validation seeking opens doors to manipulation. Prayer recenters worth internally. When worth is anchored, approval loses control. This independence protects against relational exploitation. Daily prayer also maintains clarity around limits. Limits are protective. Without limits, energy depletes. Prayer legitimizes rest, withdrawal, and silence when needed. This permission prevents burnout, which often leads to poor decisions and weakened boundaries. Protection is also sustained through surrender. Surrender does not mean passivity. It means releasing control over outcomes while maintaining responsibility for choices. Daily prayer practices surrender. This releases anxiety without abandoning discipline. Anxiety clouds judgment. Surrender restores clarity. Prayer also recalibrates expectations. Unrealistic expectations create disappointment, resentment, and comparison. Prayer restores realistic perspective. It aligns expectation with wisdom rather than fantasy. This alignment prevents emotional crashes that weaken protection. Over time, daily prayer transforms protection from effort into posture. It becomes how you stand, how you decide, how you respond. You no longer need to constantly fight. You simply refuse alignment with what erodes peace. This refusal is quiet but powerful. The sustained shield prayer creates is not rigid, it is adaptive. It does not isolate you from life, it strengthens you within it. Challenges still occur, but they do not penetrate the core. Pressure is felt, but not internalized. Opposition appears, but does not dominate. The ultimate goal of sustained prayer is not avoidance of difficulty, but preservation of integrity. Integrity is the deepest form of protection. When integrity is intact, recovery is faster, lessons are clearer, and growth continues even after setbacks. This prayer sustains protection by keeping you oriented toward truth rather than fear, alignment rather than impulse, and trust rather than control. Evil loses access, not because it disappears, but because it finds no cooperation. A life maintained in prayer is not a life constantly looking over its shoulder. It is a life facing forward with steadiness. The shield remains not because danger is feared, but because alignment is valued. If this message has helped you understand how daily prayer sustains protection and keeps your life guarded against harm, subscribe to the channel so you can continue receiving prayers and teachings that strengthen your spirit, protect your path, and keep you aligned with lasting peace.